Way back in the 1980s, I was living in East London and I was working for a firm called Book Club Associates, whose office was just about 5 minutes walk from Tottenham Road tube station. So that involved spending best part of 2 hours a day on the underground. I remember one summer we were coming back, it was on the Central line from Tottenham Court Road, and we got a few stops along and the train stopped and all the lights went off. There was no announcement over the tannoy. Being very British, of course, everyone just sat there in absolute silence. But it was pitch black. It was hot, but it was summer, no air conditioning and all that sort of stuff. So quite an uncomfortable experience. After what seemed like quite a while, it was probably just a few minutes, the lights came back on. But we didn't actually move for about another, I think it was 15 minutes or something like that. I don't know to this day what had happened. Could have been anything. But I always remember that experience of being in this small, quite confined space with a lot of other people sitting underground in pitch black. And as I said, it was uncomfortable. I wouldn't say it was terrifying or really scary. Potentially, it could have got a lot of worse, of course. But this was on a tube train in the middle of London. Now, transfer that experience to a spaceship. You're somewhere way out in the nether regions. There's nothing else around. You're flying in this metal tube with a couple of big engines stuck on the back, and the engines stop and all the lights go off. Now, that is terrifying. Today on Dragon's Teeth, we're looking at the Mothership scenario, the Iron Coffin. Hi, I'm Rob Point and thanks for joining me today. As regular viewers to the channel will know, I have started running a Mothership campaign. Mothership is a sci-fi horror RPG which basically puts the characters out into very bad situations in space. A lot of the Mothership scenarios are based around being on a ship and something happens. So you can think of your classic Alien kind of setup. However, once you start delving into it, there's a lot more depth than you might think at first. So much so, in fact, that I'm using Mothership as my system to run my current Assault Team 5 campaign. What I thought would be interesting to do is, as I play through the campaign, is to review the scenarios that we've done. Obviously, I'm not going to review ones that we haven't done yet for two reasons. One, I don't want the players sneaking a peek, but also because I simply don't know which scenarios we're going to be doing in future. Prospero's Dream is a city in space. There's millions of people living there. So in effect, this is starting off as a city campaign and it is a complete sandbox. Now, if you've been following the AT5 videos, of course, you'll know that our players form a unit, a covert ops unit. So to an extent, they have missions, they have guidelines as to what they're supposed to be doing, but it's a pretty broad remit. Disrupt the drugs trade. In effect, they can go anywhere on this huge station. They can interact with anyone. As well as that, of course, there's nothing to stop them coming off the station, hiring a ship or getting a passage on a ship to go somewhere else to investigate a facility or anything. So it's very big in scope. But the great thing with Mothership is there's a huge amount of scenarios being produced for it. There's a great community grown up around it. And a lot of these scenarios, including the one we're talking about today, come in the form of these, what they call trifold pamphlets. And the genius of the design is such that you can get a whole scenario on two sides of A4. So I've downloaded a ton of these scenarios and one or two others as well, and I'm also mining things like Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, Cyberpunk, because there are a lot of adventures and scenarios and settings there that I can easily port into Mothership. So in our very first session of the campaign, we meet our party. We see them undergoing the final stages of their selection, which naturally they all pass. They're given a briefing, and the briefing is you're going to Prospero's dream and you're going to work against the drug cartels. How do we get them there? Well, I could have just said, okay, you arrive at Prospero's dream, you hitch a ride on a freighter, you get a lift off a naval ship or whatever it is. Actually, that wouldn't really work in the setting, but I thought instead of that, let's make this getting to the place a little adventure in itself. And the Iron Coffin was the perfect scenario to do this. What I'm going to do today then is run through the basic outline of the scenario, and I'm going to try and keep that as spoiler free as possible. That part's going to be quite short. Very short, in fact, perfunctory, because I can't explain what's going on without spoilers. So I'll give you the basic outline to start. Then I'm going to go into spoiler territory. I'll give you a little advance warning. So if you're a player who thinks you might be playing this at some point, you probably won't want to see that. But what I'll then do after that is tell you how I altered it and arranged it and tweaked it a little bit in order to fit it into the setting, and also add in one or two other elements as well. So let's begin. The Iron Coffin is a trifold pamphlet, as they've become known. I think it was out maybe late 2024, early 2025, and it's for version 1.1 of Mothership, so the latest version, the new version. It was written by Sam Sear. He did the writing and the design, and the art was by Zach Hazard-Valpen, Victor J. Marino, and Sage. I'll give you just a quick view of the front and back. You can see we've got that really nice striking artwork of something on the front and an excellent ship plan on the other side. The basic setup is you are the crew of a freighter and you've been charged with delivering a package to a remote facility. Now, as soon as you hear the words remote facility in Mothership, you know you're not in for a good time. But that's it. So a very basic mission: transport this package, which turns out to be a large crate, a large sealed crate. That's it. Get that from A to B. Everything is going fine until at one point in the journey, the engines cut out, the engines just stop, and your spaceship is left drifting in the ether. That's the starting point. From here on in, we're getting into spoiler territory. So be warned, because now I'm going to tell you what's actually happening on the ship. Contained in the crate is a creature, an alien creature. I guess the artwork kind of gives that away a little bit on the front, but as I said, this is Mothership. You know there's going to be a creature at some point. The creature has the ability to either feed off of or interact with electrics or machinery. And this creature is locked in a Faraday cage, and it's actually put in a secret compartment in the cargo hold. The sort of compartment that is used for contraband, you know, when you don't want customs officers to know what you've actually got. Now, in the original scenario, the players know this. They know that the crate is put in their hidden contraband little compartment. Of course, at some point, the creature has broken out of that crate and it's gone straight up into the vent. In the best tradition of sci-fi, this ship has vents leading throughout. So this creature has gone up and into the vents, and now it's effectively roaming around the ship. The great thing with this scenario is, even if you had just that, that's a good, stressful, tense situation. There's a monster on the ship. Classic Alien again. What sets this one apart is not only what the creature can do, in the fact that it can switch off the engines. It has a little procedure. It switches off the engines. Later it switches off the lights. Later it sets the fire alarms going. Later it will control the robot on the ship. I'll explain that in a moment. So that's all good. That gives the players problems to solve. Oh, the oxygen levels, that's another one, of course, the life support. So periodically throughout the adventure, you get the alarm sounding. This gives the players something to work, because now someone's got to go to the engine room or to the life support systems and check that everything is working. They can get it all working again pretty easily, but they have to go there. And invariably, at the start, they go there on their own. I think you can see where this is heading. So you end up with a situation where the engineer character, or whoever has that skill, has gone down to the engine room and is banging dials and twisting knobs and whatever engineers do. And of course, this thing drops out of the vent to attack him. But why is it attacking him? This is the excellent part of this module. The creature has a motivation. And the motivation is it just wants to get back home. It wants to get back home to its hatchlings or its family or whatever it is. So now you can build in, this whole subplot is there with very little description in the adventure, but this is the genius of this type of design. The subplot is that some nasty corporation has snatched this poor innocent creature up from a planet somewhere, thought, oh, we want to do nasty experiments on this, whack it in a crate, send it off to our facility, and there we go. And all the creature wants to do is get back home. So the creature starts going through all these systems. Obviously it's trying to stop the ship, and it's trying to in some way get the ship turned around and take it back to its home planet. So it does what it can to stop the ship from moving. That's the first thing. It's attacking players, or, well, at first, is it even attacking players? Is it just approaching players? But what is a role player's natural reaction when a big blobby thing drops out of the vent towards them? They're going to shoot it, right? Or they're going to hit it with a spanner. They're going to take some sort of action, probably without waiting to see what the creature wants. Just a natural response. So, of course, the creature will try and defend itself. Or it might even decide to attack first anyway, just to get rid of these troublesome humans. Perhaps it can work out how to steer the ship itself. Who knows? Anyway, the upshot is we now have conflict between the creature and the crew. Now, tying in with that motivation, which I thought was nice as well, this isn't just a case of the creature stands there and there's a fight to the death like you tend to get in some types of RPG. If the creature gets hurt, it goes back up into the vent. It retreats. It's hurt. It's wounded. And it actually says in the module, treat it like a wounded animal. You know, a wounded animal will only fight if it's cornered. If it's got an escape, it gets out. So it pops back up into the vent. They fix the engines. All right, we know there's this thing rattling around somewhere, but at least the engines are fixed now. We can get on with it. Oh, now all the lights have gone off. That must be the creature again. Effectively then, this becomes a hunt for the creature, or the crew have to try and concoct a plan to get this creature back into the crate, seal it back up, and off we go. The kicker comes when they are putting the creature back in the crate, because they don't know the background story of this thing, it's just a creature. But the kicker comes when the creature manages to transmit thoughts to them, and I'll tell you how I did this when we get onto that part. It manages to transmit the thoughts that basically all I want to do is get home to my my brood, my family. I've been taken forcefully and I'm just trying to get home. At that point then, of course, this gives the players a moral dilemma, right? Do they just carry on and do their mission? Or perhaps they'll try and communicate back with this creature in some way, learn where it's from and take it back home. In a scenario, if they do that, the creature actually rewards them in some way by giving them, it's like a nuclear warhead, something quite odd. But anyway, they do get a reward for their good behaviour. If they choose not to, they get the creature in the box or they've killed it. If they killed it, they don't get any money because they've not delivered it. If they get it back in the crate, okay, they deliver it, they get their pay. All is well, for them at least. The way I handled this was the players were booking a flight to Prospero's Dream on board this freighter that was going there. They've been given instructions to go to the local spaceport. There's a freighter that their unit uses every now and again to cart people or stuff around. They've booked this flight to Prospero's Dream. The pilot, however, tells them, right, I've just got to drop something off on the way. We've got to stop over at the Yggdrasil system and I've just got to deliver something there. It's okay, it's on the way to Prospero's dream, then we'll head to Prospero's dream. They don't know that there's something in the contraband secret compartment, and they certainly don't know that it's an alien creature. So they're totally in the dark, quite literally. When they get to the point where the engine stops, they're thinking this is just a mechanical thing. The pilot, named Bug, who's flying the ship, also called the Bug, starts to get an inkling that something is wrong, but, you know, it could just be the engine. So, of course, as we expect, one of them goes down to inspect the engine, the creature appears, and away we go. Having said that, the party were quite suspicious of the pilot even from the start when he said he had to drop something off, because the cargo hold of the ship was empty. They were all that was on board. Them and their luggage was the only thing on board. So we had quite a bit of time where the players, they're walking around the ship, tapping the floor. They had an idea they might be a secret compartment, but they didn't find it. That was quite interesting. Very suspicious bunch. Of course, when the creature comes out and the pilot Bug says, oh, yeah, I think it's got out, then he shows them the compartment, he shows them the broken crate, and everyone knows what's happening. So we progress through. Now, it would have been quite easy for me here to kill a couple of characters off, particularly on the first encounter. Eric, I think it was all alone in the engine room. Boom, the thing oozes through the vents in best tentacular form, comes down and attacks him. So he's on his own, he's not got a weapon apart from a spanner or a screwdriver maybe. But what I did was scale down the monster's attack a little bit, both from the point of view of I don't want to kill a character on the very first session of the campaign, especially when people have spent so much time developing their character and background. And if you want to see how we went about that, then check out the episodes on the Mothership playlist. So there is that, but also I thought this creature doesn't actually want to kill people, it just wants to draw attention to its plight. So, no one got killed. A couple of them got very nasty cuts. The thing whipped them with tentacles. They got lacerations. The one who suffered the most was actually the pilot, because, as we mentioned before, the creature was able to take over the robot. And if I just show you here what I did with the map as well, because the map on the pamphlet is perfectly fine. However, it does show the secret compartment, which I wanted to keep secret from the players. And also I thought I'd do something, I'd make it more like a plan layout so the players can move their tokens around in Roll20. We're using Roll20 for the visuals on the campaign. So this is the map I came up with. We had in the cargo hold a freight robot called Clang. I repurposed this as quite a large robot with tracks, and it's got a couple of big arms. It's basically used to pick up big crates and carry them around. So it's quite a powerful thing. Of course, once we go through the lights out, the oxygen and all the rest of it, then the creature ends up taking control of the robot, which they just happened to switch on at the right time because it had been inactive up to that point. And it came to life and promptly attacked the pilot. In fact, it broke his leg. I think it hit him once and then it broke his leg. He wasn't in particularly good shape. I think Eric managed to deactivate it with some quite heroic and almost swashbuckling movements. He actually jumped on its back and hit the red stop button, I think. But yeah, they managed to solve that. They managed to lure the creature back into the box, and as they were doing that, that's where they get hit by this image. So they saw an image of smaller versions of the creature. They got a sense of sorrow and hunger and loss and all this kind of thing. So as I said, that's what I liked about this. There's this moral angle to it, or this emotional punch. What do? Well, they're on a mission. It's not really their business. They sealed the crate back up and kind of went, okay, it's not really our problem, which was fair enough. But we have sand loss in Mothership, and I said obviously they got sand loss for seeing the creature, but also I factored some in as well, just for that feeling of what they've done. Somewhere there's little babies starving because you've taken their mother away. That's what I like with this type of game, of horror game, where yeah, you can have your body horror, you can have horrible creatures, but that emotional distress is also a very good way to get under your player's skin. You know, that's something they'll go away and think about for a while, I hope. The one other thing I added in as well, just to ramp up the tension, is when the engines first cut out and the ship is effectively just drifting through space. After a few minutes of that, they get a collision alert from the computer. They're heading towards some asteroids. They're powerless to steer the ship because all the engines have gone, and they're heading towards some asteroids. Now, so they had something like 15 minutes to solve that issue as well. And of course, as they're trying to fix the engines, they know the creature is now lurking around after that initial encounter. So again, in this sort of scenario, it's nice to layer the tension. This is always what I enjoy in the best horror films or horror stories, horror books, is where you get a bad situation and you think, oh, well, this is not great, but you know, it's not going to get any worse, and then it does. And then you think, oh, but this can't get any worse. And then it does. You know, so if we go back to our tube train, perhaps we're on the tube train in the dark there. Well, this isn't great. Then you feel something brush against your leg. Like maybe, is that a rat or something? Well, now we've ratcheted up another level. And then maybe water starts creeping in from somewhere and the water level starts rising. So you've added another layer of tension in. Mothership, I think, allows you to do that really well, and that worked very nicely in this particular case as well. So if you're already running Mothership and you've not played this adventure, then I thoroughly recommend it. If you want to start playing Mothership, this is a great introductory scenario, whether you're doing it as a one-shot or you're going to link a few scenarios together or you're doing a full-blown campaign. All of the Assault Team 5 characters survived. They got to Prospero's dream. The pilot had the worst time because the money he got from doing this dodgy transport is going to have to pay on Prospero's dream to get his broken leg fixed. So he came off worse. On the other hand, they did sort of save his life. So in campaign terms, this is nice. They've now got a pilot who owes them a favour. That's always useful on Prospero's dream. Thanks again for joining me today. Let me know if you've played this adventure. Be very interested to hear your feedback. Or are there any recommendations? As I said, I've downloaded a huge amount of these at the moment and I'm slowly working through them. And as the campaign develops, I'll fit them in where appropriate. But if there's any particular ones you can recommend, I'm very interested in casino scenarios at the moment for various reasons, and maybe a good heist as well. So do let me know. As always, keep your comments, questions and suggestions coming in. Much appreciated. And if you haven't already, please do like, share and subscribe to the channel, as it really does help us grow. Okay, that's it for now. Take care out there in space, and I'll see you soon.